I'm here with Justin Herman, a
Yes,
good
you
buddy
are.
of mine. I've known you since well before the first DYM 100.
Well
Um,
before.
yeah, I think about 6 months before the first DYM 100, I spent my conference money to go to Southern California to hang out with a couple of youth pastors that I only followed on the internet but never met, and you're one of them. And was able to
Yep.
visit you when you were at Mariners, and you showed me
hmm
around. You gave me tips for good tacos and good beaches, and it was a good time,
Yep.
and I learned a lot.
Yep.
But
And I
yeah,
got to
hey,
meet your incredible wife. Very
yep,
few people probably are able to say that, but you have an incredible wife
yeah.
who's just awesome.
My wife Corey is pretty great. Um, Justin, really quickly before we dive into these questions, because I have like five sincere middle school questions that I like legit am like processing right now, and I might like add to these questions while we have this conversation. But in this thing called More Minutes with Frank, I just want to sit down and talk to you, kind of pick your brain about what I feel like you're really good at, and one thing I think you're really good at is talking about middle school ministry. And if I could be really transparent, I think for the before 4 years ago, I was really like I kind of almost thought middle school ministry was almost like the JV of student ministry, because I feel like a lot of churches treat middle school ministry like the JV of student ministry. But I think people like you, people like Marco, a bunch of other people have kind of elevated middle school ministry, and especially with books that are forwarded by Rick Warren, and I would love to know more
Oh,
about
oh,
who you
oh,
are.
I'm so,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You kind of caught me there. Sorry if I interrupted. I was reading this book called Controlled Chaos. It's a middle school ministry
Oh yeah.
book by Kurt Johnston that I got
Revised
to
and
have.
expanded.
You can see my name really small right there, but you can see Kurt's pretty well. No, listen, I love middle school ministry. I think middle school ministries can, I think it can be the heart of the church. I think done the right way, middle school ministry can be the heart of the church, and a lot of people are going to completely freak out when I say that because because that's such a audacious comment to make. But I really believe that, and I think I can back it up with facts. So I love talking about middle school ministry. Thanks for having me be a part of this.
Real quickly, for the people who might not know you, and we could talk about your podcast and more about the book at the end of the show, but like, where are you? How
Sure.
long you been in student ministry? Kind of what you're doing now? Would love to know
Yeah.
more about that.
Sure. My name's Justin Herman. I work at a church called Sandals Church in Riverside, California. I oversee the network of Sandals churches, which right now there's 9 campuses, and we're going to be adding more. And so I oversee youth ministry, junior high through high school at all of those campuses. I spend a lot of my time mentoring staff and coaching them and setting strategy and vision, direction, resourcing. Um, I get to work with adults in a different way than I used to when I was at Mariners, when I worked with students, hands on. And I've been doing it for about 10 years. So I started as a volunteer, which was incredible. And I volunteered under really, really great leadership in Buffalo, New York. And then I went to college in Moberly, Missouri, where I got my degree in youth and family ministry, Central Christian College of the Bible. And then I moved to Huntington Beach, California, where I got my very first job at a Presbyterian church, really, really great church. And from there, I was recruited by Matt McGill to go to Mariners Church in Irvine. And I was there for about 7 years. And then after my mom passed away last December, so I don't know when this will post, but December of 2017, she passed away from cancer. And me and my wife decided we need to make a change in our lives. And we wanted to own a house, and we wanted to have a big backyard for dogs and for our boys. We wanted to live near grandparents. And so we chose family over career for me. And I left Mariners, which is a great church, and moved to another great church called obviously Sandals Church. And I've been there ever since about time we're recording this, about 5 months. It'll be 6 months in January.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool. My wife
that's
is
the
from
deal.
Buffalo. My wife is from Buffalo, as you know, and Buffalo has really good wings, and it's one.
Amazing wings.
It's probably its only like really high point is the wings at Buffalo. There's not much else there, right?
Well, I'm a Buffalo guy, so like I'll obviously point out a
You got a
lot of
lot
things
of
that I really love about Buffalo. But if my wife was here, which she's not, but if she was, she would agree wholeheartedly with what you just said.
I
So
love it.
I guess it's
I
good
love
that she's not here.
yeah. Well, hey, so you're over at all aspects of student ministry at Sandals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
over all aspects of student ministry. And right now we're rebuilding a ton, which is a lot of fun. It's a lot of hard work. There's some days I come home honestly, and I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? I was just talking to my wife last night, and it's been really hard lately.
Sure.
My role is unique right now. I rotate around campuses to observe and help out and jump in where they need. But I'll show up at a campus and I'm not those kids' youth pastor. Like, those kids don't know really who I am. They see me on a video or they'll see me on Instagram and they'll be like, "Hey, aren't you that guy from the video?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am that guy." And they're like, "Oh, I think the videos are too long. Like, bye," and like walk away. There's no relationship there. But that's okay. They have a relationship with their leaders, their small group leaders at their campus. They have relationships with the campus leads, and I think every good youth pastor would say, "Well, that's exciting, right? Like, that's what we want," and that's what I say. And then I'm actually living it out, and it's just really tough, really, really tough. So there's a vulnerable moment for you, but man, I really love being a Sandal. I love the church direction. Love that I get to be a part of it. Really, in youth ministry, even though they have 9 campuses, it's really the ground level. In the youth ministry, we're rebuilding literally everything from scratch, and it's really exciting. It's really exciting.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, like I said, I'm over both middle school and high school in my context, and I think there are some specific issues when it comes to my middle schoolers that I legit just want some advice in. And I'm sure you might have answered some of these questions in your book, which I have, and I'm going to crack open soon. And my other middle school ministry books that I have too, like Marco's book. I was just talking about this to someone else. That's
Talking Squirrels, right?
Yeah, it's massive. And so I want to talk to you about these 5 questions I have, and they're really random. And so forgive
Sounds
me
like middle school.
Yeah, it just sounds like middle school. The first one is this: what are the characteristics of a good middle school ministry small group leader? So I have my small group leaders, and when a guy comes to my ministry, I have to determine, should I put him in high school? Should I put him in middle school? What are the characteristics that I should look for a good middle school ministry small group leader?
So I want to paint. So let me say this right off the bat. I think there's things that make a really good youth worker. So I want to start there quickly. People that love Jesus, that love students, that want to align to the vision that you have as a leader. So, if Frank, I'm talking to you, but I mean any youth worker out there, you want leaders who are aligning and are a part of the vision you have for the youth ministry. They want to see life change take place, and they know that it can only happen through Jesus. They are leaders that don't take themselves too seriously. They're leaders that see the value of parents. Now, all those things I listed have nothing to do with age, gender, race. It has nothing to do with any of those things. So you could have someone who's super old who fits all those. You could have someone who's super young that fits all those, and someone anywhere in between. So that's the first thing when it comes to just a youth worker in general. Now, when it comes to junior high specifically, I think there are a couple characteristics that I really look for. If they're kind of leader that looks for immediate impact, you will have a difficult time in junior high ministry. If you're a leader who has the long view, the long game, and typically that comes from 2 different groups that I found, at least. I think that either comes from older empty nesters. So I have had a lot of leaders who are older empty nesters. They just, through age and experience, which King Solomon would call wisdom in the book of Proverbs, because they have time and experience. They have the longer view of youth ministry. They know that this kid is going to grow up along the years and develop and grow, and so they don't want to get it all. They know that they can't get it all done in 2 years. Young leaders are the same way. If you get a leader right out of high school, fresh in college, they know that that's true because they have such close proximity to high school and middle school, so they can look back with a greater sense of ease into their own personal story and see how much growth has taken place over those years. That once you get to like 25, 26, you start to catch like adult amnesia, which is weird, and you start to forget. Probably 26, and this is not scientific, this is just my own personal view and thought. 26, 27 to like 40 something, you just kind of forget about that whole developmental phase of junior high, and you're like, well, I want to serve, but I want to make an impact now. Like I want to get to it. The youth need me. And I'm not anti that. And usually they're better suited in high school, because if you get into junior high, you have to ride through a couple of the years of fart jokes and of having what you would consider to be, oh my gosh, a breakthrough spiritual moment. And then the next day they're doing something dumb, or the next minute they're doing something dumb. And some people are not durable for that. I can't tell you how many leaders I've talked to who said, oh man, I've been serving in junior high for like a year. And like, oh, well, how's the year gone? You've been a small group leader for a year. How's it going? Well, I feel like I'm just not making an impact. I don't know. Maybe this isn't for me. And it's like, no. Don't you know Reggie Joyner, when he talks about time over time? I think we forget about the investment of time over time. And I'd probably add this last piece in. And Wayne Rice said this. I quoted it in Controlled Chaos. Youth tend to gravitate to the oldest person in the room who takes them seriously. So if you can find someone who takes junior higher seriously, students will gravitate to that person. Doesn't matter how old they are, but the oldest person in the room who takes them seriously tends to be the little bit of the Pied Piper of junior high students, because they'll be the older guy doing belly flops. We had a leader like this at Mariners. Paul, he was the guy who dressed up in costume for winter camp with his wife, who did like the medication stuff, and they would dress up in onesies. And during summer camp, he's the guy that did the belly flops, and he took the students seriously when they were in 6th grade, and he's still with that group right now. And I believe they're all either juniors or seniors now. He's been with them for a while. So the students will gravitate to the oldest person in the room, takes them seriously. So all those initial things are true, but I think that one of the big characteristics is, do they have the long view of ministry, or can you teach them the long view of ministry, or do they just have the, hey, I really want to make an impact? That's like one of the metrics that I look for when placing leaders. So that's my answer. That's what I got.
That's good. I like that though. I like the point where you said it's long view of ministry. One thing I often think, especially when I consider my middle schoolers, is the fact that like I'm just putting credit. It's like an investment, and I might not see a ton of fruit in a year. I might not see a ton of fruit soon, but like I know in my middle school years, the amount of time my youth pastor invested in me, I'm the man I am today because of the time he took when I was a squirrely 6th grader and messing around. And so having that long view is wise.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. Why? Long view is a big deal.
When it comes to that small group time, so one of my issues right now with my small group leaders is they're saying like they're very they're very hyper. A lot of them like to just sit down and roast each other and laugh and whatever. It's like it's hard to even get to the Bible time because it's like they just want to be silly. They just want to be very silly and hyper and stuff like that. What does the perfect small group time look like for you? Like, what does that look like in that time where you're like, okay, we do want to have a time of community and relationships, but we also want to actually crack open the Word and try to apply some of God's truth in their life? What does that look like?
Well, here, I think that this is one of the places that this generation is different than previous generations. I think we put a lot of stock in Bible time during groups. And we forget about the rest of the week. I'm pro Bible time during groups. I've done junior high small groups with them personally. And you get them all in the room and they're full of energy and they're crazy and they want to run around. And we got to give space for that, because boys especially, you just can't, you just put boys in a closed setting where they just can't, move their arms and, be energy. You're going to create kids that just hate coming to Bible study. They're going to make Bible and God synonymous with having to sit still, and no junior high boy wants that. Very few junior high boys want that. And there's a differentiation here between junior high boys and junior high girls. Gender is a real thing. God created boys and girls differently. And I have no problem saying that. So boys and girls are very different. So I'm speaking really to the boy side of things right now. The perfect middle school small group to me is everyone showing up and burning off energy. It's running around outside, throwing the football. It's tag, it's hide and seek, it's some other dumb game, but it's boys who want to move, and they want to move fast, and they want to move together with their friends to do ridiculous things. They want to get their skateboards and their scooters, and they want to show off the lame tricks they learned on YouTube, and convincing us all, no, I landed it at home. Like, just give me another chance. Like, give me 5 more minutes. Like, I can land it. And it's like, you're never going to land this, dude. Like, you're lying. But giving space for that. Now, here's the thing. Junior high small group, different than high school group. It's, to me, defined by 2 really important things. This is what I train leaders on. Number 1, junior high small groups are all about teachable moments more than they're about moments of teaching. So a moment of teaching is everyone sit down. Let's take this moment. I'm going to teach you something. A teachable moment is a moment that is happening that you can draw a lesson from and teach in that moment about whatever's happening. So for instance, kid X is trying to land the dumb trick he saw on YouTube, and he can't land it. But instead of having all the kids run around, we're going to get all the kids together, and we're going to cheer them on. And I know already people are rolling their eyes, but like, this sounds really lame. Just hear me out. We're cheer them on. Come on, man, you can do it. Like, give it another shot. Hey guys, you know why this is important? Because how we encourage each other is really important. Hey, who remembers the last time they were really encouraged by someone? Boom, teachable moment. You know what I mean? Like, you're taking it. In junior high ministry, you're taking normal everyday moments and making them teachable moments that a kid they don't know they're learning anything, but they are. Because just like you, I don't remember. Well, actually, I don't know if you said this or not, but I think you said this. When I was in middle school, I don't remember any lessons I learned. Like specifically, like I'm sure I took notes, but I didn't save them. I'm 33 now, but I remember themes I learned through those years. And I think one of those big pieces is things like these teachable moments of hey guys, wait, hold on a second. Hey, do you know why we do this? Or, well, hold on a second. Hey, do you know why this is important? And it's those kind of teachable moments that are gold. So for me, when a parent goes home and they're like, or a kid goes home and a parent emails me the next day and they're like, hey, it sounds like all they were doing is running around being crazy, and they spent 5 minutes in the Bible. First of all, if you can get your middle school group to spend 5 minutes in the Bible, I'm stoked for that, especially if they're 6th grade, 7th grade. Like, I'm pretty into that. I think that camps, worship nights, like things that we can program, even if it's a take-home worship night that you resource leaders with, I think things like that are going to kind of move the needle a little bit as far as spiritual development and, like, heavy top, especially camp is just so core to middle school because we get away from all the distractions, and you're able to be in a cabin, and you start to open up, and then you're kind of forced into this, hey, we got to be in the cabin for 45 minutes, so like let's just do this thing for 45 minutes. And even though they may be a little squirrely, it forces them into moving the pin or the needle forward as far as the time they commit to something, so that when you jump back into groups 3 weeks later when you're back home, it's like, hey, remember at camp when we sat around for 45 minutes? Well, we're only going to sit around for 15 minutes here and do this. But it helps you move that further and further. But I would reply to a parent to the email and say, you know what? They only spent 5 minutes in the Bible, but let me tell you about some of the teachable moments we had. Because meanwhile, if there was only 5 minutes in the Bible, we had 7 teachable moments of things that just happened that we were able to pose just these random questions that got some discussion going. And I'd probably another really big thing. Prayer requests are a really big deal. I think that I don't know if we downplay those, or I don't know how everyone else thinks about it, but I think when we're able to get all the students together and say, hey guys, we're going to pray for one another. What are your prayer requests? And you don't pray about you, pray about other things that are happening in other people's lives. Because we don't need to be taught how to pray for ourselves. But when we teach each other how to pray for other people, and then when we pair them off, and it's a little awkward, but this is pushing kids to develop spiritually, right? So yeah, it's a little awkward, but it's a really good thing when a kid sits knee to knee with another kid and prays for them. Those 2 components are what I would measure success. So if I talk to a leader and they're like, I'm like, what did you do for small group? They're like, oh, all we did the whole time was play football. And then we spent 5 minutes in the Bible, and that was it. And we had snack. I'd probably say, yeah, every once in a while, maybe, that's just the energy of the group, and you have to get permission for that. But, hey, did you find any teachable moments through the whole thing? Oh, no, I didn't find any. Well, hey, let me give you some coaching on how to identify some teachable moments and have discussion around that. Hey, did you do prayer time? Oh, no, we just ran out of time. Well, let's prioritize prayer time as one of the most important times of group. And if we prioritize it as one of the most important parts of group, then we will be able to make time for it That's what I would say. So those are the two big things I'd look for, because you're never going to get kids to sit still as long as high school kids will. I mean, I have high school kids that literally are reading Grudem's systematic theology, and they come up to me and they're like, "Hey, I watched the teaching video. We're moving to teaching video at Sandals. Watch a teaching video, and I don't really know if that's accurate what you said in there, man." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm just a pastor, but why don't you give me what you got, 10th grader?" But totally for real. Like they will read stuff. They'll journal like totally differently. And a lot of this, I was talking about boys. I think there's some really smart youth workers for girls. I'm not an expert in girl world, and I don't claim to be. There's differences, for sure. So I think that when it comes to girl groups, it's just different. I think in general they're a little bit more serious, and like they'll have the goofier times, but you wrangle them and have discussion differently. I think they journal differently. I think they have a different. I mean, they're mentally 2.5 years more further in development than boys are. So it's just different.
Yeah, I definitely, it's truly seen in my context where our middle school small group can get some sincere times in scripture and discussion. But there also are silly times where they just want to do cartwheels and whatever. But like, it's the guys that tend to be much more squirrely and things like that. I think that was helpful though, finding teachable times, and even if it's like in the midst of the chaos, you find that teachable moment, then you had a successful small group. And I think that's good.
I just find it's just so important for me to just say this, because Heather Fleece talks about the marriage between chaos and structure and the invisible structure. Here's the thing. If you set out with your junior high small group thinking, you know what we're going to do? We're going to get these kids going. Like, we're going to, I know all the other kids are crazy, but our kids are going to be serious. And so we're going to get them, and we're going to get them to come in, and we're going to sit in a circle, and we're going to do Bible for 45 minutes, and then we're going to pray, and then we're going to have snack, and then we're going to clean up snack, and then we'll maybe play a quiet game of thumbs up, and then we're going to go home. If you go into group thinking that, you will be disappointed 100% of the time. If you go into group saying, you know what we're going to do? We're going to emphasize teachable moments. We're going to, if we can get 10 minutes of Bible, great. And if we only get 5, good. And we're going to prioritize prayer time, and we're going to have snacks, and we're going to force everyone to clean up no matter how long it takes. And then we're going to play some games that get them moving. And that's how we're going to define success. A kid's going to walk away thinking, oh my gosh, like we played games and like we just talked and we were barely in the Bible. But we know as youth workers that we have structured that. That was the plan going in, because we are able to articulate and set what our goals are. So when it comes to junior high, it's just setting goals that are realistic, that pushes them a little bit, but that doesn't set you up for failure as a leader.
Let's talk about discipline and behavior issues. I think this is a topic that like is kind of weird, because I feel like, especially in my context, I always want to try to distinguish between that this is not school. Like, kids don't have to be here. So I don't want to have like a system where it's like there's a ton of rules and we have to like discipline them. And like, and my thing is, if we discipline someone, what are we disciplining them to? To not come back to youth group? Like,
it's tough.
I don't want to do all that. But I think there's just a couple instances, especially in middle school services, where they're either not necessarily paying attention, they're like, roasting each other, making fun of each other, kind of just, doing whatever. We haven't had any like super serious issues. Praise God, not yet. No one's like fought or anything like that. But I guess my question to you is, in your experience, especially with middle schoolers, where does the case of, if there is, rules or structure in the sense that like they know the expectations of being in the ministry, and is there any sense of discipline, whether in the main service or in the small group, that needs to be stated or said, or is it a free for all?
Yeah, definitely not a free for all. You just can't do that. And I want you to know that this is the one area where I have really evolved over time. When I was young in youth ministry, I probably went with more of the free for all, because I was that kid. Okay, if there was rules that could youth group, I broke every single one of them, and then some. And my youth pastors never kicked me out of youth group. And there's a lot of times where I probably deserved to be in a pretty big way. So I was always anti having rules that would kick a kid out. and I've evolved over time because I've seen, and I've actually done ministry and seen practically how that's all lived out. So I want to split into two things. Thing number one, actually three things. I'm going to try and do as quickly as I can. Big room. I'm going to talk about small groups, and I'm going to talk about creative solutions. So let's talk about big room. Big room. Kurt Johnson is the one who taught me big room strategy, because I remember when my very first church I was working at, things were totally chaos. It was not controlled. It was absolute chaos in the worst ways. And I know what to do. And I want to kick kids out. And he challenged me on, what they're doing, these kids who are great, what that's doing to everyone else's experience. And the truth is, well, it's doing terrible things to everyone else's experience. Like, it's wrecking everything. But I just love those few kids. And it's like, okay, like I get I get that. But if all those other kids stop showing up, or they feel like they can't learn anything there, or they don't feel safe there or comfortable there, then you're not helping anyone. You're actually hurting everybody. And so he really challenged me, and he taught me the 3 steps that I still use: respond, receipt, remove. So in the big room, if kids are screwing around, we train leaders to respond. I never do it from the stage. Never discipline from the stage. You discipline from the stage, you are hurting yourself. You don't even know how bad you're hurting yourself, because every kid in the room is thinking, oh my gosh, if it can happen to him, it could happen to me. And even if you're thinking, no, I'm just disciplining them, they're not thinking that. They're thinking of being called out and pointed out and put on display for the entire room. And very few kids want that. Okay, very few kids want that. And so when you discipline from the stage, it just sends the wrong message. So we train all the leaders to respond. So we have them spread out throughout the room. And if a kid's messing around, and we define what messing around is. So whatever the leader defines as messing around. They're screwing around, they're talking, they're poking people, they're throwing pen caps, they're just doing junior high stuff, but it's not the end of the world. But they respond. They don't wait. They don't do the thing where, as an adult, we say, well, they'll stop in a second. They'll stop it. I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna wait them out. They're gonna stop in a second. Here's the thing: you can never wait them out, because they're not going to stop, because they're kids, because they're not thinking the way you're thinking as an adult. They're not going to stop. So you have to respond. Responding means getting up from where you're sitting, or leaning over, because hopefully we have leaders spread out throughout the entire area, leaning over and just tapping on the shoulder and saying, hey, I love that you're here. Knock it off. He's got 10 more minutes of talking, or just give him 5 more minutes, or hey, just knock it off till the end. I love that you're here, but you got to knock it off. So you always start with an affirmation and just tell them to knock it off. Okay, don't just lean over and say, hey, you quit what you're doing. You're a bad kid. Lean over. Hey, I love that you're here. Can you knock it off? Can you just quiet down? Give them 5, 10 more minutes. So respond. Number 2, they keep going, you receipt. Okay, so maybe that means receipting them. Maybe it means receipting yourself. You have to decide in the situation what that is. But maybe it means you tap them on the shoulder and say, "Hey, I love you're here. Hey, can you come over here and sit at my row with me? Sit over here by me. Hey guys, scooch down a little bit. They have small butts in junior high, so like they can kind of do like the half on a seat. You can just squeeze them down. They have small butts. Some of them have big butts, but most of them have small butts. So you're just like, hey, here, you guys scooch down. Can you come sit over here, sit next to me? Or you yourself get up and you just go over and you just move the kids aside. Hey, I'm going to sit here. You just kind of squeeze yourself in. So you receipt. You put yourself in close proximity, or you put them in close proximity to you. And the very last one, which very rarely need to get to this, is remove. You just tap on the shoulder and say, hey, hey man, I love that you're here. Hey, let's go outside. This week's just not the week for you. Now, here's the thing. 2 things. One, I do this, okay? And I've removed 3 kids in all the years since I learned this model, which is about 7, 8 years ago. 2 of those kids, it was whatever. They just had tons of energy. They weren't ready to sit in a row and listen to someone talk about God, or they just weren't ready for it. And they just went outside and they were shooting basketball. So the leader goes out there with them. So removing doesn't mean, hey, get out of the room. It means, hey, I'm going to go with you. Let's go outside and shoot the basketball. Let's go talk. Let's just go hang out. Let's go get some candy. Let me buy you a soda. Like, it's not a discipline like making them in trouble. It's just, let's get out of the room, because obviously this isn't working, and that's okay. Let's go do something else. One of those times I did that, we got out of the room and we're shooting basketball talking. Turns out, I'm not kidding you at all, before youth group, he found out his parents were getting divorced. I did not know that, obviously. Nobody knew that. And so he didn't, he had a lot going on in his mind, in his heart. he was not ready to sit down and listen to some guy talk about whatever he was talking about. But you get him out of the room and you get discussion going, and that's where real pastoring happens. Sometimes we think the kid who's kind of the bad kid or the loud kid, is a nuisance. They tend to be the kids who need ministry a little more, if we're willing to get out of our way and see it. So that respond, receipt, remove, and the remove part, if it has to get to that point, it's you going with them and buying them a soda and talking. It's not about, like, you shouldn't do that, I can't. It's not berating them outside the room. It's just getting out there and having a discussion. And you don't know where that discussion is going to go. That's why we're youth pastors, okay? In a group is a very similar thing. Kids mess around, you respond. Now, part of this is group dynamics. So if a kid's talking a ton, how do you say, hey, let's hear from someone else, or hey, thanks for sharing that. Hey, let's hear from someone who hasn't talked yet. So part of it is kind of just the group dynamics of how you run a group. But if they just keep messing around, it's the exact same thing. It's the hey, it's respond, receipt. The remove one feels weird because it's a smaller group. But I still do it. But I add something extra into groups specifically. So one of the things I think is really important with groups is groups coming up with their own rules. I'm not pro youth groups coming up with rules and posting them on the wall, because if I was an unchurched kid walking in, I saw a bunch of rules on the wall, I'd be like, what is this? Like the Ten Commandments? Like what is this? This is weird. So I just think that's weird. And if you're a church that does that, I want you to know that I don't not like you. I think you're wonderful. Like, everybody does different things. For me personally, it's just not for me. But groups are different. Groups can create identity through structure. So, and kids thrive on structure. They want structure. They're not going to say it, but they want it. So the thing that I love is getting a group together, especially groups that are having some of these issues. I don't typically start off every group with this idea, but because I want them to naturally either not need it, so it's, it's whatever, or they're having issues, and then it's like, we can introduce this into the group system. So be able to sit with a leader and say, hey, I want you guys to come up with rules for your group. It's rules that everyone gets to pitch in on and suggest. So we're gonna get a big paper, we're gonna write down all the the group bylaws, whatever, and everyone's gonna agree to them, and then everyone's gonna agree what the consequences are. So we don't interrupt people. Okay, that's an easy one. So if we interrupt people, what do we do? If you interrupt people, you have to be quiet. You have to be silent for 3 minutes. For a junior high boy especially, and a lot of these are boy examples. So like, I just want to be full disclosure. I'm a boy. I don't know if you can see from the video, but I'm a guy. That works really well. They create kind of their own system, their own rules, their own structure for their group that they want. They all agree to it. They all agree what the consequences are if it happens, up to and including, hey, if you do it 3 times in one group, then you have to take a week off. Now, you might think, oh my gosh, that's so terrible, you have to take a week off. No, it's not. It's a week. Kids take weeks off all the time for soccer. They take weeks off all the time for football. They take weeks off the time because they have too much homework, or because they need more sleep, or because mom and dad have something to do and they can't drive. They take weeks off for things. So taking a week off to teach them something, for them to learn a lesson, and it doesn't mean they're not part of the group. It means that when we all meet together, we're all taking a photo and we're sending it to them and saying, we miss you, can't wait to see you back next week. But it's discipline. Like, it's not a bad thing. I don't know why we shy away from it so much. Then this is the last thing. It's kind of like the kind of create your own adventure. When kids are screwing around, you have to create systems that work for you. You can't be, because every situation is different. I had a group one time. They were just, they didn't bring their Bibles to group. They were talking the whole time. They weren't paying attention at all. And so me and my leader instituted this thing where at every juncture, like, they would earn something that would go into this pot of money that would be our end of the year party. So like, there was this shared incentive of everyone to kind of get on board with this thing. I would have I would call certain kids into leadership. And I know that may sound weird. But tend to be the kids who are kind of misbehaving. The kids who need discipline tend to be natural leaders. So how do you call that kid into leadership in a unique way? Maybe instead of leaving him in the rows where he can screw around, we want to put him behind the soundboard and behind the computer to like move the slides and give him responsibility in the room. You have to kind of create what works for what your given situation, and don't be shackled to the respond, receipt, remove is the only way to do it, because every situation is going to be different. So have an openness to problem solving each individual situation.
It's awesome. That's awesome. I think that kind of systematic idea is really good, but I really love that idea about having the small groups make like a covenant or like rules for their thing. Because you're right, like in the large group setting, it's kind of weird, especially if you have new visitors. It's like, wait, is this school? Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
But in a small group setting, it's like it's almost like something that's like unifying to them. Like, no, this is like the things we're gonna believe is true, and we want this to succeed. I really like that idea of and hopefully whatever happens in the small group overflows in the big room as well. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is straight up. I did something last Sunday to kind of somewhat resolve this, but I would love to hear more of what you think about this. For whatever reason, obviously Fortnite is amazing and it's the biggest deal
Mm.
ever. During worship, our kids aren't singing; they're Fortnite dancing the entire time, and even like to slow songs. Like they're just like, and the way they do it is they're not even on beat. They just do a dance. They look at each other, and the other person does the dance too. And I think my thing that I'm wondering, kind of like you were saying, is like, it's fine that they want to burn off energy, and if they don't want to sing, that's whatever. But like, it's affecting the other people in the room who might want a genuine worship experience where they want to actually sing songs and get into it. What, like, especially like I know I'm sure Mariners, had it, and I'm sure Sandals has had it. It's like, how can we help middle schoolers? I want to be careful when I say this, but have more reverence towards worship. I'm not saying they should be solemn and like put on suits and stuff like that, but like I want them to like obviously push the needle at camp and all these bigger events, but like week in week out, they are not focused on worship. They rather do Fortnite dances, tease each other, and one thing I did was I went up to them and I said, "Hey guys, I'm glad you guys are having fun, but right now let's focus on worship because the time right now is to worship God and to sing songs to Him. And if you don't want to, that's fine, but could you respect others?" That's what I said really quickly. But I would love to know if you have any tips and tricks about when it comes to middle schoolers and worship.
Yeah, so I love worship for middle school, and I think for me it starts with defining what the goals are of worship time. We're gonna sing, obviously. We had a student band at Mariners. We're kind of figuring out worship at Sandals is one of the things we're kind of building from scratch. But we did a student led worship at Mariners, and it was awesome. And so, and it wasn't excellent to the definition of high quality music. It was excellent to the definition of kids having the opportunity to use their gifts on stage and other kids being able to see their peers using their gifts on stage, and that was a really good thing. So I'd start there. I'd start there as like kind of defining what are we going for? If we're going for excellence, what does excellence look like in the junior high space when they're not going to get some of these abstract terms? Like most of these songs they sing, like it's completely abstract. They don't know what they're talking about. So maybe for the kid Fortnite dancing, that is their way of worshiping. And I know that may sound kind of crazy, but also worship isn't just the music we sing either. Talk to any worship leader and they'll tell you that. So, would you rather have a kid sitting down like on their phone texting someone or doing Fortnite dancing because they're up and they're moving to the music and they're liking it? Like they're doing in what their mind defines as this joyful singing, dancing unto the Lord. So I would start here, looking at the student, and it's so hard to define this. Sometimes it only comes through conversation and just kind of getting a feel for the youth ministry. Is the purpose of them doing the Fortnite dancing to disrespect, dishonor God, disrespect, dishonor worship, disrespect, dishonor each other, to be a distraction in the room, to grab the attention to themselves? Or is it two or three boys, four, however many boys together, and like this is what they're doing? And while people are singing and they don't know the words, but like they know that people are corporately doing an expression of something, and in their minds they're like, oh well, this is what we know. Like yeah, it's hip, yeah, it's like the in thing, yeah, it's the trendy thing, Fortnite in general, but we're drawing from what we know and what's on the kind of the kids tend not to go just deep naturally to grab things of depth and then pull them up to the surface. They'll tend to just kind of rely what's on the surface, and as new things roll over onto their lives, there's new things that are on the surface they're drawing from. So that is the definite trends and fads, right? So Fortnite's the new trendy fatty thing, so they draw from what is closest to the top. In 2 years from now, Fortnite, chances are, will not be there'll be a new thing that's kind of on the surface on the top, and kids will draw from that. Very rarely will they reach deep down like, oh man, remember 3 years ago Fortnite dancing? Let's bring that up to the current. Like it just doesn't happen typically. So if their heart is, well, I don't know, I just want to worship and I don't know the words and I'm a bad singer, but like it feels like everyone's kind of moving around. So this is just, I'm doing what I know. Well, it sounds like their heart's in the right place. It just is different than what we as adults would think. Oh, that's what worship looks like. If we did that in the worship center with the adults would be like, "Oh my gosh, what's he doing? Like, I can't believe this. I didn't know this was multicultural week. Where are the flags? Like, what's going on?" Like, adults would totally freak out. But if the heart behind it is, well, I don't want to worship. I want to worship, and this is what I like. I'm just drawing from what I know. Well, then we're in really good shape. We should keep doing that for sure. It starts with me defining that. I had a couple kids doing worship one time. They were, and I have a video on it on Facebook somewhere. I think it's on Instagram too. I got to find it and send it to you. And they were standing, literally this is front row at worship, and they're sixth graders, and they're standing back to back trying to judge, and then standing face to face trying to judge who's taller of the two of them. This is like in front of the room, in the middle of worship, and they're trying to figure out who's taller. They're in sixth grade. That's goofy. That's junior high. I mean, that's dumb. That's goofy stuff. And I didn't do it. I recorded it. I didn't do anything to interrupt it because it wasn't really distracting anyone, and it was just kind of hilarious. Fast forward, a couple of years later, when that kid was in eighth grade, during the hurricane in Houston, afterwards, the Mariners did a bunch with one of the churches there, Chris C's church. I forget the name of the church, to do recovery stuff there and whatnot. Sent tons of the team. I was on team number 8. That went, and I was like, well, I'm the junior high pastor, so if I'm going to go, I'm bringing students with me. So who am I bringing? And so I brought a couple kids from the group, and I asked their parents if it was cool if I brought them, and they were like, whatever. Like I had trust with them, so I could do whatever I wanted. And we took them, and man, oh man, these kids worked their tails off. They were working all day, mucking out houses. They were praying with people. It's like, oh wow, like to look back at that video when they were in sixth grade. And then to look at them now praying for people, mucking out houses, serving 10 hours a day, hard labor. It tells a story of a junior hire. It just tells a story of maturity and growth. So if what they're doing is meant to distract, to bring attention to themselves, then yeah, you got to shut it down. If it's they're just drawing off what they know because they want to worship like everyone else is worshiping, but they're just drawing off what they know to do it. You give it some slack. Give it back, take it be. Have a conversation with them, understand what their heart is, because if their heart is good, then I feel like God's going to be pissed at you if you shut it down because it doesn't fit what your model of church is. I think it's a slippery slope when we start defining, no, this is what worship looks like. And I'm for the reverence thing. I know what you're saying. But again, I think it comes back to the heart. A lot of people would look at Jesus and be like, he was totally irreverent, but they were judging it by the rules and the systems they had in place at the time, that if they spent, Jesus wasn't irreverent. He was just rewriting the book of everything. Like, the Sermon on the Mount, right? I know what you've heard, but let me tell you. I mean, that's what Jesus was doing. So for a junior high kid who's still maturing and developing, we can't just mandate what it should look like because it'll look different to them. But getting a sense of where their heart is, I think is key. I just think that's just so key in making that kind of the distinction and determination.
Yeah, I asked at National Youth Workers. I asked Taffy, who is the guy who runs Cluster of Students over at Saddleback,
Yep.
and I said, hey, I have middle school kids doing Fortnite dances during worship. How do you feel about that? He said, do it, let them do it. It's fun. And I was like, okay, if Taffy's chill with it, then maybe it's not as bad as I think it is. And so, but yeah, I like what you're saying. I like maybe asking some of those hard questions, like, hey, is this just you wanting to worship and like this is the only thing you can come up with, or is this something where it's like you want attention for yourself and somehow trying to get that to pull out of that kid? I think that then you'll kind of get your answer there. That's good.
I agree with Taffy 100%. And I would just add that if you want to develop a culture of worship in your group, and you have the choice between a bunch of kids who are sitting there on their phone, completely disengaged in the back row, who don't want to be there, or you had kids who were up Fortnite dancing and being part of the mix, and their heart was right, they were doing because they want to worship. Who would you choose to build off of? Well, I'd choose the Fortnite dancing kids, because the distance between the Fortnite dancing with the right heart and continuing to understand the heart of worship is a lot shorter distance than the kid who's sitting in the back row who's like, I don't even want to be here. Like, this is weird. Like, I'd rather be, whatever. And I love both those kids, and I minister to both of those kids. But the distance between the Fortnite dancer and having this understanding, this grasp of worship, I mean, it's just shorter distance.
That's good. That's good. Hey, one last question. When it
Sure.
comes to middle school ministry and something that you felt like you've done that either drew a lot of middle school kids, or that was just a very successful like middle school event, what is like really quickly like an event that you've done that just absolutely killed, that you feel like other youth pastors should know about it because it would benefit their middle school ministry?
Yeah. Let me think here. Let me think of two that I'm going to give you two that I really like. So I want to just one. So two that I really like. I took North Point does this thing called the Double Dog Dare-a-thon, and I kind of stole that idea and made it my own thing at Mariners. We called it Insta Games, and it was an Instagram-driven night of challenges, and they'd post videos and the whole thing. It was a whole lot of fun. I still have I think I have the resources for that. So you could probably email me. I could probably email you some stuff if someone wanted to email me. But it was Insta Games. It was fun. It was at homes. It was get a group of people together, at a house from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. We're gonna put challenges on every 20 minutes, and then we'll see you all at church tomorrow morning. So we did it like on a Friday or a Saturday, and then I think we did it on Saturday, and then we told them all to come to church on Sunday, and we would announce winners and whatnot. And it was very, very cheap. It cost almost nothing to do, and it was a whole lot of fun. So that's the first thing. The second thing, a lot of churches do VBSs or some kind of like summer thing for children that junior hires can volunteer at. I'm pro that stuff. We did VBS after parties after all the VBS days, so it made a longer day for us, but it was great. They would do all their VBS stuff, and then it was an after party. We'd cook burgers and hang out and play with water guns and fill up inflatable pools with water and shoot each other with water guns and just have a blast and hang out. And it was open to anyone. And it was a really great time. It cost very little money. The kids were already there. Parents loved it because it just gave them a couple extra hours to hang. And we fed them lunch. And so it cost a tiny bit of money, but it was a really big payoff. It was just a really easy, normal flow of the calendar. And we just maximized that. So it was just a lot of fun. So I'd probably say those two things were really cool events.
I love it. I love it. I like that. I like that first event you said. Where like,
Insta Games.
yeah,
Insta Games. We'll probably do that again at Sandals. I just don't know when.
I dig it. Awesome. Well, hey, Justin. It's been awesome. Tell everyone what you're doing, how they can find you, all that good stuff. We just want to know more about how they can keep up with who you are.
Yes. Justin Herman. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter at Hey Justin Herman. It's all spelled out the way you think it is. Hey Justin Herman. I wrote the update of Controlled Chaos with Kurt. It's his book, and I added a bunch of commentary throughout. You can get it at Youth Cartel. You can get it on Amazon. I'm sure you'll put links places for that, but it's called Controlled Chaos. It's probably the first middle school ministry book that's come out in 10 years that's middle school ministry focused, other than some of the stuff Orange does that really is micro. Like, this is just an overall middle school ministry kind of field guide handbook of stuff. And I do a podcast called the Controlled Chaos Podcast. And the book came first. The first round of the book, West podcast, I the name Controlled Chaos, which he obviously said yes to. And then we did the update to the book probably 3-4 months or 5 months into that. So the Controlled Chaos podcast, and you can find it anywhere you find your podcasts. And it is middle school specific. We've had really cool people on there. We're going to have more cool people. I'm sitting down with Dr. John Townsend next week. I'm really pumped for that. They're just really cool thinkers. And then every other week it's me and Kurt talking specific junior high ministry. And then the off weeks are me interviewing someone talking about leadership or something, junior high ministry related, something in general. I would check it out. And you can go to controlledchaos.fun. So controlledchaos.fun is a blog. Middle school people blog stuff. You can get links to everything is on there. You can sign up for the email, which we send out emails with resources and just fun stuff. So I'd say, and you can give me a call if you want to. My cell phone number is 714-600-0354. I love handing out my cell phone number, and you can call me, text me. Texting's easier. Actually, don't call me, text me. But if you're like, hey, I have some questions, I'd love to connect. Anyone can give 15 minutes to somebody. So I got 15 minutes for anyone. Just talk about middle school ministry or anything that's happening in their church. I'd love to just connect.
Love it. Love it. Hey, just a quick plug about your podcast. I listened to the episode. It was like a mega episode you had at Youth Specialties. And,
Oh, yeah.
and you interviewed Stuart Hall. It was weird. You had Josh and Matt McGill just talk to each other. Like, you weren't even on that episode or that clip. But it was like, there was good content. But I would say of that whole show, your conversation with Cooper was gold. And just like that just to be able to talk about like what you hope, even if they've never heard it, how to hand off a ministry to someone else and stuff like that. I thought like that was brilliant. And I thought like it made me think about like that whenever the season is that I'm leaving this church, I hope I can like speak those words to the person that comes after me the way you said that to Cooper. And I thought it was really awesome, man.
Transition is hard. Transition is hard, man. It is difficult stuff. So the opportunity to talk with the person that took over for your ministry, and I know Cooper, and I like Cooper a lot, but the opportunity to talk to him and was a really big deal to me. It was important to me. It was really important to me. So being able to do that was great, and being able to do it for the podcast was even better. I think we hand off ministry terribly sometimes. I think we receive ministry terribly sometimes. I think there's a whole lot of good humility that goes into doing it the right way. So thanks for affirming that. Yeah, that was a great episode. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, make sure y'all listen to that episode and other episodes on the Control Cast podcast. Well, Justin, thank you so much. I'll put everything that they want to know in the description below this video. And if you've made it this far and you don't know about my podcast, somehow you got here first, check out 15 Minutes with Frank. It's on the DYM Podcast Network. It's also all over iTunes, Google, and Spotify. Hey, thanks, Justin. It was great talking to you, man.
Anytime, dude.
See ya.